Hey, John. Janie, you there?
Good morning, Dan and Heather and John.
Good morning.
Bye.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining last night, Heather and John. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new through the conversation.
We did
Last night.
our
Well,
davening group,
Oh,
davening discussion group.
Some
Yeah.
people have groups that are actually working.
I think ours fell apart.
Yeah, I think about 21 or 22 of them survived and the others fizzled.
Well,
So,
mine didn't fizzle, never started.
yeah, for some reason, whenever there's a diffusion of responsibility, some things just fizzle or don't even start, as you put it. But yeah, I'll still give you a mug, Dan. I know.
Well, then it's worth it all.
Hey, do we get mugs in addition to hats?
Yes.
Get a hat.
Do you have long johns? Then I can really use those.
I
We
forgot.
got the hat last night.
Yeah, I actually forgot that your group, Heather, yours was one of the first groups, and so I lost track of it. But now that you mention it, the mugs hadn't come in by the time I did your first session, so I never gave you guys the mugs.
Okay.
So that means we're gonna have to meet a
I
fourth
could
time.
use a hat.
Yeah.
What?
I could use a hat.
Okay, well, we've got plenty of leftover because I ordered almost 200 and I have probably about 50 or 60 left. I gave some to the Chayalim that were here for,
Good. Oh, that's
they
nice.
were desperate for warmth.
I thought they were warned to bring warm clothes.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
We've learned from people
How cold was it
in
here?
California that even if you warn them, they don't understand what it means.
this was the first trip to America for half of them. So exactly what John is saying, as much as you tell them to bring warm clothing, they assume it's like, maybe like Yerushalayim, but it was cold and windy, and it didn't snow, but it came close on Shabbos.
Right.
What, they never visited Har Hermon? They
I
never
guess
went
not.
skiing.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of them came with the right gear and others did not. Amy, how was your grandson's wedding? I never got to catch up with you after that. It was a busy week.
Yeah, it was busy. It was fun. I showed my Chayalim the pictures, and it was quite a thing. It was interesting, because it was Persian, so they had different customs. They don't do the bedekin, they don't wear the kittel, they don't do the yichud after. They had the talis, which they flopped on top of their faces, and then they picked it up, and it had drama, it had laughter. The chuppah started like an hour after it was supposed to, and we're standing around. What do? They point to me. They say, you walk down the aisle first. So I danced down the aisle because I'm by myself. What should I do?
It sounds like a festive environment.
Yeah, and then they didn't think it out well because finally after the first dance of the bride and the groom, they danced them up to their chairs where they have to sit, and they're sitting there. The groom says, "Well, I can't eat because I didn't wash, and I'm not allowed to get up." So they had to bring him the cup, the washing cup, and the bowl. And then the bride says, "Well, I can't eat because dinner is buffet, and I can't get up." So, she's a Persian girl. So they said to her, "Okay, we'll bring your food. What do you want?" She says, "Anything except Persian."
Okay,
Good stories. And Janie, are you back in Sharon? Or are you still, you are? Okay, welcome back.
This week. And
So
then
was the baby born?
back down to Maryland.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have the baby? She had the baby?
Rose had the baby.
Yeah. And Rose had the baby. Yeah. Well,
Last week I was holding her during the shiur.
we
Oh, yeah,
saw.
last week, right.
That was
Mazel
pretty
tov,
spectacular.
mazel tov.
Yeah, I'll put an announcement in this week.
Good, okay.
Yeah, give a
definitely.
kiddush, Janie.
Before Pesach, I don't think so.
Yeah, throw all the hummustic stuff. Just throw it at the kiddush, and then you don't have to sell
Although
it.
Max and Ann Rose had a Simchat Bat on Sunday, and we're left with like 2.5 trays of bagels.
Oy.
I
Feed
brought
the
them
poor.
home. I don't think
Feed
I'm
the
Families
poor.
suffer like that.
Will we have a class next Tuesday?
Good question. I'm undecided. My wife would vote for no. But I'm open to it depending on interest. We can play it by ear, but what's yours? Are people around? Are people going to be scrubbing the cabinets, cooking the brisket?
I'll be in my car driving, so if I can get Zoom in my car, I can at least listen.
Mhm.
I'll have Sipora Klinger, and I told her she should join in, so that would be a great opportunity for her.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
and I can take I'm in the kitchen anyway. I can take the break for
Whatever you
45
decide,
minutes.
Rabbi, whatever you decide.
Well, are we
Okay.
doing Tzav today?
Yes, we're gonna do a combo of Tzav and Pesach.
So what
So-
would we do next Tuesday then, Shemini?
We would do Shmini or Pesach. I don't know. But this week I prepared an intersection between the Parsha and Pesach, which was a little hard to figure out, but I think I got something good. So I'm excited to share it. Anyone want to take a guess of where there is I'll just give a brief summary of Parshat Tzav just to remind us all. It really goes through another list of the sacrifices more from the perspective of the Kohanim and their role in facilitating them.
My guess
Yeah, what's your
is
guess?
Tzav is from mitzvah, and it's a mitzvah to observe Pesach.
Okay, that's creative.
I was going to suggest that we have lots of discussion of matzah.
Good.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so that's definitely going to be part of the picture that I want to paint. I'm sort of giving it away now by sharing the makorot, but let's go through this step by step. So the theory here is that the Seder is a extravagant korban toda. That the entire structure, the theme, the significance of the Seder meal is an extended, expanded, overly sort of dramatized, or not overly, but just very elaborate meal of Thanksgiving. And the Korban Toda is what's introduced to us in Parshat Tzav. And so I want to try to test out this theory by drawing several points of connection between the Korban Toda and what we do at the Seder.
Okay.
And And so John already gave us one great link, which is that the Korban Toda has matzah in it. So let's accrue some more linkages by going through the source material, and we'll make a list of things that remind us of Pesach, that remind us of the Seder, to give a bit more depth to this thesis of the Korban Toda being sort of the model or a framework upon which the Pesach Seder is built. Okay. So the Psukim in Parshat Tzav say, Im al Toda Yakrivenu, if one brings the Thanksgiving offering, Vihikriv al Zevach HaTodah, and he should, with this sacrifice, bring the following things: Chalot matzot bilulot bashemen. It's ironic that we call it challah, but challah is really just about dough. It doesn't necessitate that it has risen and that it's become chametz, right? Interestingly, when you make challah, when you make matzah, there is still a mitzvah of hafrashat challah. And you
Taking
make
a piece.
taking a piece away, right? And so, even though you're making matzah, you make the bracha of lahafrish challah. And so it might feel like a bit of a violation, right? But the mitzvah of separating a piece of the dough has nothing to do with it eventually becoming challah or becoming chametz. It has to do with it being in a certain volume upon which you need to separate, was given to the Kohen once upon a time. Now it is, left for being burnt or not used. So the Korban Toda has a matzah component to it. And these matzahs are sort of, dunked or mixed with oil. Right, or kike matzot mishuchin bashemen. So this is a fascinating description of matzah here, because what a rakik is almost a cracker, right? It's a thin kind of matzah that is breakable, right? So this sort of weighs in a little bit into the what was the matzah that they used to eat, So in the time of leaving Egypt, when they threw it over their backs, it probably was not the flat cracker-like kind of matzah. It was the soft matzah, right? But then when they made matzah in the Beit HaMikdash to be brought, or the Mishkan to be brought with the sacrifices like the Korban Toda, that does seem to be described as the flat, thin, easily breakable, brittle kind of matzah that we do consume today. So which matzah are we, trying to recreate? The matzot of Mitzrayim or the matzot subsequent to that? So here we see that these matzot were like crackers. And also the solet merubechet chalot bilulot bashemen. And then there were also like cakes made of flour and oil, like a sweet cake that was allowed to rise and had more of a fluffiness to it. So we see that the Korban Toda was comprised of a hakrava, a sacrifice of an animal, and also that it had both matzah and chametz. So I want to actually fast forward to a linkage here in the Seder, which might help us appreciate the first of the 4 questions.
Okay.
When a kid stands on a chair and makes his parents feel like they made a good investment on all that day school tuition by belting out the 4 questions. The first one is Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylot. Why is this night different? Shebechol halaylot anu ochlim chametz umatzah. On other festive occasions, we eat both chametz and matzah. Tonight, kulo matzah. So what's the kol halelo? What's the other occasions, the other festive occasions that's being referenced here? Do most people have bread and matzah at a meal?
No.
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 But when did people commonly have both matzah and chametz together at a meal?
I guess during the time in the desert.
When they were bringing a korban toda, when they were making a meal of thanksgiving for themselves, their family, their friends, and their community. So the point of reference of the first question is saying, I thought this night was supposed to be like a korban toda. How come it's a little bit different?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Sometimes we focus on, tonight just being about the matzah, but the allusion here, b'chol haleilot, is not to a standard weekday, where people were having both bread and matzah. It's referencing the protocol for bringing a korban toda.
How often do people bring a korban toda?
I'm glad you asked. There are 4 situations in which bringing a korban toda was required, but it was also something that was voluntary. So it could really be brought for whatever reason one felt grateful for. But it was sort of obligated or obligatory after 4 particular circumstances. So in source number, let's see, I did not label the sources. So I think it's the 2nd or 3rd source down where it says Siddur Ashkenaz Yemei Chol.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is just taken from the basic sort of Nusach Ashkenaz Siddur. There's an introduction to the Birkat HaGomel. The Birkat HaGomel is the residual or sort of leftover ritual from the Korban Toda, and the same criteria apply for when one should say a Birkat HaGomel to when one should bring a Korban Toda. So those 4 situations are outlined in Masechet Brachot. Arba'at tzrichim lahodot. There are 4 people that endured a particular situation that need to give gratitude publicly to God. Number 1, Yordei Hayam Kisha'alu Mimena. One who has crossed an ocean, crossed a sea, has endured a dangerous passage across water. 2, Holchei Midbarot Kishiagiu Liyishuv. Somebody who traversed a dangerous desert. Doesn't necessarily need to be specifically over a sea, but any kind of travel that had risk, that had danger, that one survived. All right. Again, remember that this is a description of the situation 2,000 years ago when travel was a lot more dangerous than it is now, which is a topic for another time in terms of how this manifests with the Birkat HaGomel today. But the 3rd situation is Misha Hayachola V'nitrapes, someone who had a sickness and was healed. And the 4th one is Misha Hayachavush B'beit Hasurin V'yatza, someone who was captive, was kidnapped, was in prison, and was released. And the halacha is that it's best to say it after having an aliyah to the Torah, right? If
I just want to point out the beauty of Rav expressing it as one who crosses the sea. So that allows for the opportunity thousands of years later to actually fly in an airplane over the sea and still bench Gomel.
right.
Or I guess maybe a rocket ship in the future.
He
Rabbi,
was-
do you think the Jews, having crossed the Sea of Reeds, would have said it
Good.
or would have done it?
So Janice is already jumping ahead to the second link to Korban Toda and the Pesach Seder. If we think carefully, we could make an argument that all four of these categories, all four of these examples, all four of these circumstances were endured by the Jewish people as they left Egypt, right? They
What about the
crossed desert.
sickness, though?
What?
When were they sick, per se?
Well, they didn't. They survived the boils.
No, one
and-
who had a sickness and was healed.
Yeah, all the plagues.
Oh, yeah, but they didn't get them.
Some of them did, some of them didn't. Right?
Get technical here.
What?
Let's not get technical.
Yeah. Right. Makat Bechorot, right, was pretty close, right, to home. So they were spared, but the general population around them was getting sick. So we could certainly argue for three of the four in terms of the desert, crossing the ocean, being trapped, and being liberated. Right. And so if there's this collective national experience of these, then there should be a collective national expression of gratitude. And that happens through the Pesach Seder.
Great.
Okay. So, the bracha that we have nowadays of Hagomel is sort of a carryover of the Korban Toda, which was meant to publicize a personal salvation. Right?
Was the
someone makes-
Korban, I'm
What?
sorry, was the Korban Toda done in the evening or during the day?
Great, we're gonna get there next.
Oh, okay.
Good. Okay. Just one more word on Hagomel before we get to some of those specific components of the Korban Toda. So the Birkat Hagomel is meant to be said by a man or a woman after surviving anything which was close to life-threatening, which they felt a scare or fright for their well-being. And there's some subjectivity to that, right? For some people, it might be flying on an airplane, all right? For others who fly, every week across an ocean and feel safe and secure doing so, for them, maybe the threshold is different, and flying across an ocean is no longer something that gives them fright. But somebody who is in a car accident or a near car accident, right? Last week, someone in the shul had a tree fall inches from their house and smashed both of their cars. And they had gotten out of the car just seconds earlier.
Wow.
And so they came in and said a Birkat HaGomel, right? And the way that it gets publicized is somebody comes in and says the Birkat HaGomel and everyone else gets curious. Why did you say it? What happened?
Good.
And then it spreads, the salvation spreads, right? And that's sort of the way of publicizing the miracle and expanding the gratitude, right? So those are sort of the mechanics of the Birkat HaGomel as a bit of a hand-me-down or a sort of leftover from the mechanics of the Korban Toda. The Korban Toda, as we're about to go back to address the point that Heather made, had a large volume of food. Why such a large volume of food, right? V'solet mirubechet, chalot bilot b'shemen. There is a whole solet, a whole large volume of flour that needed to be used for this. Why that amount of flour, it's not in this section, but I think it produces like 22 loaves of of matzah or cake or bread, right? A very large amount. And all of that needs to be consumed within a very limited period of time. Skipping to Pasuk Tet Vav, it says, Ubasar Zevach Toda, right? That the meat of the offering, Biyom Korbano Ye'achel, it needs to be eaten together with all of the other accompaniments, with all the other hors d'oeuvres. It needs to be eaten on the day that it was brought. Lo yaniach mimenu ad haboker, right? You have just the day to eat the korban, and if anything still remains, the morning after, it needs to be burnt. And so, as Jews, we don't like wasting food. So what do we do when we have a lot of it? We invite our friends. We knock on our neighbor's door and we say, I got a lot of chametz. I got, 2.5 trays of bagels left over for my simchat bat. Would you like a few bagels? And then they say, what, tell me about, the name of your daughter. And then they share, and, the miracle of childbirth is amplified. People appreciate it when we share the bounty that we have. Right? Those are the mechanics of the Korban Toda. There was a lot of food. It needed to be eaten within a short time frame. So that forced there to be a lot more people involved, and then a lot more people talk about it. And then they say, did you hear about, this family? They just made a simcha, and then the good news spreads.
So I'm a little confused. In verse 15, it's to be eaten on the day that it is offered. Does that day end at sundown, or 3 stars, or the following morning? Since none is to be set aside until the morning.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the Gemara says that a Korban Toda can be eaten the day it's brought and the night after.
Okay.
So the Bayom here is saying that's when it needs to, like within the sort of 24-hour period until the next morning, right? If it's brought, early in the morning, then it can go until the following morning, up to 24 hours, but the cutoff is going to be, sunrise of the following morning. Now, what other korban uniquely has that sort of short runway?
On Pesach?
Good.
Korban Pesach.
Awesome. You guys win the prize. So in the next pasuk here, I brought from the Parshat HaChodesh that we read 2 weeks ago in the description of the Korban Pesach. Moshe gives the instructions to the Jewish people, Velo totiru mimenu ad boker. You cannot leave anything over from the Korban Pesach until morning. And once the sun rises, anything which is still there needs to be discarded. It needs to be burned. So it seems like this is unique among all korbanot. These are the only 2 korbanot that have such a short time span for eating. So it would seem to be that the Korban Pesach, well, we could look at it one of 2 ways, right? We could make an argument to say that the first collective Korban that the Jewish people brought, even before the Mishkan was an idea, was the Korban Pesach. That's the primary act of acknowledging God and giving gratitude to him upon being saved from the hands of the Egyptian taskmasters. And then the Korban Toda takes a page, from that playbook and says, okay, that's the precedent of what it means to give gratitude, which is that, it has to have a lot of people involved to spread the thanksgiving beyond the individual to a broader group. And to do that, it's got to have a short time span for consumption of the food, right? And, just like the Korban Pesach was eaten with matzah, so too the Korban Toda needs to have a component of matzah, because every gratitude that we have, we can hearken back to the initial liberation of our people, because that was sort of the root cause of every other opportunity that we have had subsequently. That's one way to sort of look at the relationship between the Korban Toda and the Korban Pesach, that the Korban Toda is really borrowing from the Korban Pesach and taking a few elements of it and then shifting some things too, like adding some chametz, right? Adding some cakes, right? And it has more, it's not as strict in terms of the animal that is brought. There's more variability. You don't have to have like with the Korban Pesach, you have to have a designated group that's registered ahead of time, and people outside that group can't be eaten if they're not on the invite list. Whereas the Korban Toda is a more free-flowing, more open, you can invite people last minute to join that. So there are certainly many differences, but there's at least some sort of structural similarity. So that would be one way to look at it. And the other way to sort of analyze or approach it would be to say that the categories of korbanot sort of are pre-existed, right? The notion of a korban toda is an archetypal kind of korban. And even though the Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim happened before that was introduced, all of the subsequent years of the Korban Pesach was, sort of modeled after, or meant to remind people of the regular experience of bringing a Korban Toda in the Mishkan and Mikdash.
So, small question. The
Yeah.
Korban Pesach was sacrificed in the afternoon, right?
We're correct. Bein ha'arbaim
And
in
the
afternoon.
Korban Toda was done in the morning. Am I correct?
The Korban Toda could be brought anytime during the day.
Mhm.
Anytime in the day before and evening. It could not be brought at night.
Yeah.
So so there's a little bit more time to bring the Korban Toda than the Korban Pesach, but both cannot be. Well, no Korbanot can really be brought at night.
How did it evolve now that we do the Brachot HaGomel and we do it when the Torah is out? Is that something that just over the years kind of became?
Yeah, I think it has to do with Mondays and Thursdays being the market days, when there were the most amount of people around. And that's one of the reasons that the Torah was instituted to read the Torah on those days, because it would be most convenient for the most amount of people.
Right.
And
Good
so
thing they didn't have markets every day.
what?
Good thing they didn't have a market every day.
Yeah.
Shul so late.
So if the purpose of Birkat HaGomel is to spread good tidings, then you want to do it on the days where most people are around. So you sort of can hitch it onto a ritual that requires a lot of people on a day that most, more people are there. But even though we ideally have the Birkat Hagomel attached to a laning, it's not necessary, right? If one wants to say, if it's difficult to get there for laning, one could say a Birkat Hagomel in front of 10 people, even not when the Torah is out, right?
People meaning women and men?
I'm sorry?
Do people mean men and
Yeah.
women?
Yeah. It's the same criteria for like a Kiddush and Chilul Hashem, right? What's technically defined as a Kiddush Hashem is when you do something that sanctifies God's name in front of a public audience comprised of 10 people. And a Chilul Hashem is the opposite of that, in front of 10 people, and men and women are included, right, in that count. And so for the Birkat Hagomel as well, it's similar criteria. When I mentioned the family that had that tree fall, they wanted to make a Birkat Hagomel the morning after it happened. Right? They had such intense gratitude for being alive that they wanted to sanctify that by doing it right away. So I think it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday morning, and we just did it after davening, right? Oftentimes a woman who has given birth to a child says the bracha of Hagomel, and whenever she can make it to shul the first time, right, even if it's on a Sunday morning, we would say Birkat Hagomel then, even if there's no, Torah reading.
And Rose said it at the Simchat Bat.
Yeah,
Very nice.
great example, right? It's amazing that she could recover so quickly to be able to do it. Many women, it takes a little longer, sometimes several weeks or months before they feel stable and healed sufficiently to be able to make that bracha. Some women feel like they're ready to do it at the bris. That's happened before, as well, within sort of a week. So this is a little bit of a way to appreciate Parshat Tzav as a little bit of a precursor to Pesach, especially through the Korban Pesach, which was taken on the 10th of Nisan, which I believe the 10th of Nisan falls out on Shabbat, right?
Yeah.
So, right, that's the day that the Korban Pesach was brought into their homes to watch for no blemishes to develop, right? That was sort of the beginning of the act of rebellion against the Egyptians who worshipped these animals, and that's why it's called Shabbat HaGadol. One of the reasons, beyond the Haftorah using that language, it was the Nes Gadol, a great miracle that the Egyptians didn't attack the Jews for bringing their gods and tying them to their bedposts to monitor them before sacrificing them. Right. So there's a lot of sectionality between between Shabbat HaGadol, the Korban Pesach, Korban Toda, this upcoming Shabbat. So I hope we were able to weave a bunch of threads together.
Nice.
Give you something to think about, and maybe a new insight to the Manishtana. Why we're
good.
referencing
I like that.
the
Very
night
nice.
both matzah and chametz together.
I'm going to tell everybody at my table that I came up with the idea.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. So you'll let us know what you want to do for next week.
Yeah, I'll. It'll be in the announcements, but I'll try to send out a note too. I'm probably gonna ask my wife how behind we are.
Sure.
John
You
and I,
know the answer to that question.
John and I will not be joining class next week. We're picking a friend up at the airport.
Oh, lovely. Okay, great. Wonderful. And Aaron, it's so great to have you joining for the second week in a row. And
It's great to be joining.
Zaka next week.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll wish everyone a good day and good luck cleaning and cooking and
Thank
preparing.
you, Rabbi. Thank you for today's class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
thank you for
Rabbi.
class.
away and to realize that Pesach is next week.
A week
Yeah,
from tomorrow night.
Yeah. Okay,
indeed.
Rabbi, are you going to
Okay.
be in the shul for a minute? Can I come over now and bring my my chumetz sale?
Yeah, sure. I'm around all day.
Oh, okay. No, okay, I'll bring it over right now. Thank you.
Okay, I'll see you soon.
And we can do Mechiras Chametz tonight after Married, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be going a little bit. Yeah, we can do it if you can fill out the form ahead of time. That would be helpful. Just
Okay,
because I'm
sure.
teaching a class soon after Mariv, so I just have to do it quickly, but I can do it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
sure thing. Okay,
Have a
Okay.
good day, everyone.
so bye.